my time travel story. I think it was 2016. I had this download from my guides that I needed to write a book. And it sort of was about spiritual concepts, healing, etc. Now, what you need to understand is that I grew up in a very Christian childhood and upbringing, quite conservative farming community. I had a relatively happy childhood, especially happy in terms of my family life, maybe less happy in terms of my sort of surroundings and environment and school, etc. And so then I went to university, and there was a point sort of mid-university where a lot of stuff happened in a short amount of time that was really traumatic for me, just a lot of trauma. And so I almost felt like I spent the next 20 years after that just healing from this trauma and finding a way back into my body, into my emotions that I had completely blocked out, and slowly discovering methods like tapping or meditation or working with my dreams, lots of different sort of entry-level spiritual techniques that had helped me heal. And so the calling for me was to write a book about these things. So I spent months and months and months researching and writing about these things, but it just felt like very hard work to actually write this. Then one day I had a breakthrough when I realized that somebody told me that I needed to stop writing this for other people and I needed to write it for myself. And I realized in that moment, I had this sort of flash of inspiration, that I needed to write it for myself literally. So what I did is the whole book changed and became me having a conversation with my past self. And it was my past self that was at university before all the very traumatic stuff had happened. That was quite happy and going to class with the book bag and happy with the friends and going out and so on. And I was talking to that past self of mine. And the entire book is a conversation in terms of my future, let's call it present version at that time, talking to the past version of me about stuff that would happen, about techniques, about wisdom, lessons learned, etc. So I spent probably 6 to 8 months immersing myself in this very intense conversation that I was having with this past self of mine. And it wasn't just a literary device. It felt like I was having an actual conversation and sharing of wisdom, sharing of knowledge, sharing of understanding, sharing of love with this past self of mine. And I remember in the foreword of the book where I started the conversation, I actually connected to a moment where in that past self version of mine, I'm walking to journalism class and I have my book bag and so on, and I see her in front of me, and I have so much compassion and almost heartbreak for what that aspect of mine or that version of me will be going through quite shortly, unbeknownst to her. And so the book came together and it was published, and maybe 6 months after that I was looking through some poems that I'd written while I was in university. So at the time, that was one of my main processing methods, as I was writing poetry a lot. And some of it wasn't really good poetry either, but it was a therapeutic mechanism enabling me to get in touch with my emotions and express. And there was a beautiful quality to quite a lot of them. And I was reading through these poems and remembering and, just accessing the memories and so on. And I came across this poem that I'd written at that time, before all this traumatic stuff happened to me, where I actually say in the poem that I was walking from my hostel to class today, and then suddenly before me I saw a future version of myself, and she was looking at me with these fiery eyes, and I wondered, what does she think of me? How does she see the world differently to me? And wishing that there could be some sort of a conversation in terms of her just sharing some soul wisdom with me. And I'd written that poem at the time that I was focusing on in the book writing process, but I didn't remember writing that poem at all. I didn't remember the incident. When I read the poem again, I remembered the incident and sort of walking around and almost having a vision of a future aspect of myself and sort of wondering what would she think of me and what I'm doing. What, you know, there's a call for understanding and, you know, a sharing of a moment there. And when I read that poem, it blew my mind because it almost confirmed for me that I had somehow traveled back in time from this present aspect of mine to communicate and share something in that moment. I was really there. That past aspect of mine had felt it and had noted it in her rambling scribblings.